Welcome to this discussion about Death Cafe, something which many people struggle with. It's a taboo subject still, isn't it? Death. Church doesn't discuss it sometimes either. We gloss over it maybe during Easter week. How bizarre is that? So we'll look today at what Death Cafe is. We'll look at a presentation we have for it. Just what is Death Cafe for many people? Let's have a look. The first thing is it's a franchise. It's a bit like going into Subway and asking for a Big Mac. You just don't do it. You can't change the rules of the place. If you're a street pastor, you have to wear the clothing. And with Death Cafe, you have to follow their way of doing it. It's something which is being set up by the secular society for 30 or 40 years. We need to follow that idea. So if we use the word Death Cafe, we need to follow that understanding. It's a facilitated conversation. It's not something that we lead and say, this is what we're going to talk about. It's about what do the people who attend our Death Cafes, what questions do they bring? What's on their mind? What's on their heart? What do they really want to discuss? And we ask other people and see what they've got to say. We don't have to have the answers. The collective wisdom of the room is the one which is brought to bear. There's food available. Great. Cake, most often. We have soup in the one we run. But food is available and it's free if we can do it. There are no speakers required. There are no menus of questions. You can get them online. But please, Death Cafe says don't. Allow that person the freedom to come to the room with those questions. It's not a bereavement session. Too often they become a form of counseling, which you need to be qualified to handle the trauma which is being exposed. They're different. That's a very different session. I find these Death Cafes are full of humor. They come out with it and they want to discuss in an open, a vulnerable sense, but open and honest. Tell me about this. What's the answer to that? It's a reversal of the guest and host relationship. We come in as potentially the host, the one who organizes it, and then we sit back. And the person who comes with the question is the one who initiates that conversation. And it's a community in the making. People are fed, people are regarded as part of that community, that tribe, and they grow together. This is the one that we run at Pollock Shores, just south of Glasgow. It's every second Tuesday. And we have that Death Cafe. The soup probably looks better, actually, than it does in the picture. It does. I just want to look at that quote at the bottom. There are only 2 days with less than 24 hours in the lifetime. One is celebrated each year. It is the other that makes us see living as precious. It's that kind of vibe that we want to pass across, that we can discuss something. We discuss birth. A new baby arrives in the family. We're so passionate about it. But when someone gets to the end of life, we all close down and shut up. We need to discuss it before it gets there. I'd love to have that game, wouldn't you? The Funeral Director's Playset by Lego. It is real. It's a limited set. Coming with the crematorium. We like to use really radical pictures, imagery, which try to engage. If you set up as a church Death Cafe and put a cross, people are going to struggle. Think of the past where they were told to come to church, they were part of their life, and they've now been free to make their own decision. If we put a cross there, it's going to traumatize them. We need to say, this is something which will engage with you. We try to talk about the spirituality if they're wishing to do so. But we link with other pushing up the daisies, the NHS, the Scottish Partnership for Palliative Care, crematorium, undertakers, people who might come in and be my myth busters, not those who will lead the conversation, but those who have a finger on the pulse to know how we can do it. And that's that question. What is a good death? All the questions we talk about are related to that. Again, some different posters we've been using of that idea of the body being composted in the soil and coming out and growing flowers. It's very pagan, maybe, and it engages with people. They can relate to that. And the grid, it just gets people going, thinking, oh, that's different. Oh, this one's for Valentine's Day. one of our best attended ones. I like humour and thoughts about it. I love that. This is my final resting place. I've also seen coffins which are barbecues, which may be a bit sort of touch and go on that one. The idea of how to engage with that person about something which is taboo. And I use the picture on the right, the whirlpool of grief, to show that the Kubler-Ross grief cycle of that linear of denial and grief and anger and bargaining, it isn't like that in real life. It's total chaos. And eventually we come out into the river of life. We have grown around the grief. That's so important. We do not allow that grief to disappear. It can't. That grief is love. But we grow around the grief. We get bigger. So some questions we've had. What else is there other than cremation? Well, there are other things, other than natural burial and burial, things which cost a lot. So we try to discuss what is potentially around aquamation, which is where the body is put into a container with alkaline. And that will basically break down the body and the bones and form an awful lot more residue than you would ever get in a cremation. It also doesn't require a lot of heat, energy, and also the toxins are taken out. You're not going to have that the disposal of problems. I think aquamation is only available in the States at the moment. But we need to highlight it to get people discussing. Terramation is beautiful. It's laying a body in a casket and putting it with some sawdust and some flowers and leaves, vegetation, and eventually this will, over 4 months, decompose. The body decomposes into something which is a huge bag of fertilizer. Just think of the potential of allowing a family to hold on to this, to plant that soil in their garden and allow flowers to come up each and every year. Your flowers. Just think about it. We need to push the boundaries to allow people to think what could be. People about donating bodies to medical research. If you do so, it will allow medical research to go further forward with cadavers there that the medical students can use. But if your body is full of drugs or have problems there, it suddenly is not available. So the free cremation the university was going to offer you is now no longer free. And you have to pay for it yourself. A wonderful woman whose husband only recently died stood up at the first session and explained this. She was empowered to tell us. It was beautiful. When we think about dead bodies, we don't want to touch them. The Catholics have a wonderful idea of allowing the body to come into church. Other faiths do as well. But sometimes in Christianity, we don't want to do that. We allow some other people to look after it. And we have a very short time in the chapel of rest at the undertaker to actually be with that person. So we discussed this, and then we thought about what happens at a crematorium. The minister's at the front, the celebrant's at the front, and the family are held back. So we encouraged someone to come forward when their son died. And they did. And they hugged that coffin as they sobbed to say goodbye. There's the idea of a daisy. A daisy is someone who's willing to listen to people as they're dying and to walk with that family from the last breath to the funeral, maybe even prepare the body, not the undertaker, so the body stays at home. And then the family can be with that person. It takes away the idea of death is gone, but they last longer to the funeral. And can I end it all? It happens in our first death cafe. We need to think how we're going to respond. Talk about euthanasia. Let us broach that subject so we can understand it more. We have lots of materials. We have grave talk cards from the Church of England, which is great. They're not menus, they're just prompts. We have the Crossing Guidebook. You can Google that. It's beautiful. It was very expensive. It's now allowed on PDF. We have guides about terramation, that process of protecting the body, so addressing it and allowing it to decompose. About writing your own eulogy. Think about what wonderful things happened when you were 20, but no one else knows. You could write it rather than the minister. One of my colleagues has a video eulogy. They haven't died yet. They update it each month. Oh, sorry, every year. Sorry, apologies, every year. And then they have this idea that when they get to the crematorium, their face will pop up and the video will start. Just think how that might be a bit freaky, but actually they want to be part of it. We've got After Your Last Breath quizzes. There's a Scottish version. I'm from Scotland. But we try to put the legal side, and there's lots of books which I've highlighted there. Some more difficult to read than others. But then again, we need to understand more. And Catherine Mannix is a palliative care doctor discussing how people die. And that's useful to know. Something we're doing in a couple of weeks' time is off to the University of Glasgow to do an interfaith chaplaincy death cafe. Death cafe, not talking about people who are in the 80s maybe, but people in their 20s. How would you discuss something about that? What would they be bringing to the table, I wonder? That's something we need to think about. Cakes, conversation, a cuppa, relaxed. Let's hear what the students and staff have got to say. So this has happened in September 22. We started then. We were told, don't bother. Who's going to talk about death? It's the most popular of all our weekly sessions. We do well-being, we do games, we do crafts. We're soon going to do a financial one. But at the moment, in the weekly sessions, death cafes numbers are the highest. We get support from NHS and the crematorium and undertaker. They want to be part of it. They see the church as part of this growing network. We're doing the new Death Cafe, University of Glasgow, and we've also got an annual conference planned in Glasgow in August. It's a new community which is growing and talking and being and fed and connected. And what it does is it allows that woman whose husband died, who could talk about the understanding of medical research. It allows the woman whose son died, who can go to the front at the crematorium and hug that coffin. It gives the students a chance to discuss something that perhaps they'll never never want to talk about before, but they can there. That is the potential of Death Cafe. It is beautiful. Thank you.